Kherson residents board buses under forced evacuation orders from the Russian army as Ukrainian troops close in on the city. For 8 months, life has been tough as people face shortages of just about everything and harsh treatment by Russian military.
On the left bank, the occupiers continue to intimidate and kidnap people. In recent weeks, we witnessed them kidnapping one couple, and the next day a woman was hanged in the center of Skatovsk just because she said Skatovsk is Ukraine. So the occupiers continue the intimidation of the population, with the kidnapping of people in the occupied territories.
Losing Kherson would cost Moscow the land bridge it so desperately wanted between the Donbass and Crimea, areas it occupied in 2014. It would also allow Ukrainian artillery to get that much closer to Crimea. Worse still, a loss here would provide more evidence that Russian forces are on the brink of collapse.
He faces a situation that I think, again, is irreversible. There's no amount of shambolic mobilization, which is the only way to describe it, no amount of annexation, no amount of even veiled nuclear threats can actually get him out of this particular situation.
Those forced to live under Russian occupation, however, say liberation can't come soon enough. After 6 months in occupied Kherson, Pastor Alexander escaped the city with his wife and 10 children.
When the Russians took over, we weren't sure what to do, but we decided to continue with our church services.
Russian forces, on the lookout for so-called Nazis, searched his house several times. On September 6th, they arrested him in front of his wife and children.
I was kept in solitary confinement for 6 days, when they put me in a cell where there were 7 people but only 3 beds.
During interrogation, the Russians tried to prove he was a Nazi, ironically because of an English Bible in his office. Pastor Alexander was more worried about photos on his phone.
Many Americans donated to help with the construction of our church. He accused me of being an American agent. He was just looking for a reason to keep me. On my phone, there was a lot of evidence of my cooperation volunteering with the army. So that became my prayer that they would not even see my phone, and Lord closed their eyes to it.
Between interrogations, he shared his faith with his cellmates.
My wife had managed to slip me a small Bible. So with that, I started witnessing to the other men and myself were there together for another 10 days. But the 7th day, they had all made Jesus Christ the Lord. That was when I finally realized why I was there.
Alexander had no idea if he would ever see his family again.
While I was being interrogated, the commandant said, if it was up to me, I would shoot all of you right now and throw you in the landfill. They hate Ukrainians so much. They cannot even stand to hear the word Ukraine.
Then, after 15 days of captivity, a miracle happened.
An Orthodox priest, whom I had never met before, came to the commandant and asked him to release me. And he agreed on one condition, that he could keep my car. So at the church there was still a minivan, and we put all my family into it, along with the injured neighbor, and we headed toward the front lines.
Their ordeal wasn't over. It took 4 days and lots of prayer to get through all the checkpoints to reach friendly lines.
I saw such joy in my children's eyes when they first came upon Ukrainians. They saw a soldier and said, "Look, they don't have masks. The Russians are all walking around in masks." And I said, "That's because they have nothing to hide. Bandits always wear masks."
Pastor Alexander and his family are now staying here in Kyiv and working with the local church while they pray for God's direction about when they should go home. But as Ukrainian forces move closer and closer to the city of Kherson, that day could come sooner rather than later.
I know that He will continue taking care of us, so I'm trying to seek first the kingdom of God and wait for everything else.
From Ukraine, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.